Marcus Richardson stands tall in the aisle of the luxury first-class cabin, his expensive suit contrasting with the contempt in the flight attendant's eyes. Heather Whitman loudly demands the Richardson family deplane, accusing them of being in the wrong seats despite their valid tickets. Security guards approach as passengers record the confrontation. Marcus reveals a business card that makes Heather's face drain of color. "You don't understand. These aren't just my seats. This entire aircraft, and the 300 others in your fleet, they all belong to me." How quickly can power dynamics shift when assumptions collide with reality? Before we begin this shocking story, comment where you're watching from, and if you believe in justice prevailing, hit that like and subscribe button to stay updated on more true stories of courage against discrimination. Marcus Richardson had built his empire from nothing. The 42-year-old tech billionaire had transformed a startup in his garage into Richardson Technologies, now valued at over $30 billion. Yet on this particular Thursday morning, as he rushed through LaGuardia Airport with his family, none of that seemed to matter. His wife, Adrienne, a former corporate attorney whose sharp mind had helped navigate countless business deals, checked her watch anxiously. Their 12-year-old twins, Zora and Zachariah, matched their parents' hurried pace, understanding the gravity of the situation. "The doctor said Mom's condition is stabilizing, but we need to get to Atlanta as soon as possible," Marcus said, his phone pressed to his ear. The call about his mother's sudden hospitalization had come at 3 in the morning. Eleanor Richardson, the strong-willed woman who had worked 3 jobs to put Marcus through college, now lay in critical condition after a stroke. "Gate 27, Terminal B," Adrian confirmed, guiding the family toward Horizon Airlines' exclusive VIP check-in counter. Despite their platinum status and the fact that Marcus secretly owned a controlling interest in the airline, they preferred traveling without fanfare. 6 months ago, Marcus had quietly acquired 67% of Horizon Airlines through a series of strategic investments but had kept his ownership private, believing the airline should continue operating on merit rather than ownership influence. As they approached the VIP line, a white attendant with Brett on his name tag looked up, his smile instantly fading. His eyes narrowed as he assessed the well-dressed black family. "Regular check-in is over there," Brett stated firmly, pointing toward the crowded general line where passengers stood in a snaking queue. "We're platinum members," Adrian explained calmly, presenting their membership cards. "We're booked on flight AX472 to Atlanta." Brett took their cards with visible skepticism. "I'll need to verify these. It's protocol." His eyes lingered suspiciously on their credentials. Marcus observed the white executives who had entered the VIP line behind them being waved through, without similar verification. The twins exchanged glances, having witnessed this scenario play out countless times before. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked, maintaining his composure despite the urgency of their situation. "Just following procedure," Brett replied coldly, typing with exaggerated slowness. "These cards could belong to anyone. Our photos are on the accounts," Adrian pointed out. Brett ignored her, reaching for his phone. "I need to call my supervisor." 5 minutes passed while the Richardson family waited, watching other passengers being processed efficiently. Finally, a senior attendant rushed over, her eyes widening in recognition. "Mr. Richardson, Mrs. Richardson, I'm so sorry for the delay," she exclaimed, shooting a sharp look at Brett. "Please let me personally escort you to your gate." Brett's face paled as his supervisor processed the family's boarding passes with effusive apologies. "We're so honored to have you flying with us today." "Thank you," Marcus replied simply, not bothering to elaborate on his connection to the airline. The slight had been familiar. Another day, another reminder that in some people's eyes, his achievements, wealth, and status meant nothing compared to the color of his skin. Once aboard the aircraft, the family settled into their first-class seats. Zora and Zachariah quietly discussed their grandmother, worry etched on their young faces. Marcus squeezed his wife's hand, trying to focus on the priority, getting to Atlanta to his mother, rather than the casual indignity they'd just endured. Flight attendant Heather Whitman moved efficiently through the first-class cabin, offering pre-flight drinks to passengers. Her practiced smile beamed at every traveler, until she reached the Richardson family. Her eyes skimmed over them as, if they were invisible, continuing to the white passengers seated behind. After serving everyone else, Heather began collecting drink orders. Again, she bypassed the Richardsons completely. Marcus raised his hand politely. "Excuse me, could we get some water for the children?" Heather glanced at him briefly before continuing her conversation with an elderly white couple across the aisle. Adrian and Marcus exchanged knowing looks. This wasn't their first experience with being deliberately ignored. When Heather returned with a tray of drinks, she once again served every passenger except the Richardson family. Zachariah, thirsty after their rush to the airport, looked confused. "Dad, why isn't she giving us anything?" "I'll try again," Marcus said reassuringly, pressing the call button. The light remained on for 7 minutes before Heather reluctantly approached. "What do you need?" she asked curtly, her friendly demeanor completely absent. "We've been trying to order drinks since you began service," Adrian explained calmly. "The children would like some water, and my husband and I would appreciate coffee." Heather's eyes narrowed. "I didn't see you," she stated flatly, though she had passed them multiple times. "I'll get to you when I can." She walked away without taking their order. 30 minutes into the flight, the Richardson family remained without refreshments while Heather had served second rounds to other passengers. When Marcus pressed the call button again, Heather returned with an exasperated sigh. "Is there a problem?" she asked in a voice loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Yes," Marcus replied evenly. "We've been repeatedly overlooked for service. My children are thirsty, and we'd appreciate being treated with the same consideration as other passengers." Something flashed in Heather's eyes, not embarrassment or remorse, but indignation. "I believe there might be some confusion about your seating arrangement," she said, her voice taking on an official tone. "There's no confusion," Adrian interjected, presenting their boarding passes. "These are our assigned seats." Heather barely glanced at the documents. "I need to check something, please wait here." She retreated to the galley, speaking in hushed tones with another crew member while glancing back at the family. As the plane leveled at cruising altitude, Marcus tried to focus on his mother's situation rather than the growing tension. He called the hospital for an update, learning that Eleanor had stabilized but remained in critical condition. Just as he ended the call, Heather returned, this time with 2 security officers who had been traveling on the flight. The atmosphere in the first-class cabin shifted immediately. Other passengers looked up from their magazines and tablets, sensing conflict. The Richardson twins sat up straighter, confusion and anxiety evident on their young faces. Marcus and Adrian shared a brief glance, their years together having taught them exactly what was coming next. What they couldn't know was that this moment, this seemingly routine instance of discrimination, would spark a chain of events that would shake industries, expose decades of systematic racism, and ultimately test the very limits of their resilience. The coming storm would threaten everything they had built, risking not just their reputation and business empire, but their family's safety and Marcus's mother's very survival. "Sir, ma'am, I need to see your boarding passes and identification," the first security officer demanded, standing imposingly over the Richardson family. Heads turned throughout the first-class cabin as passengers realized something unusual was happening. "We've already presented them multiple times," Marcus replied calmly, though his jaw tightened. Nevertheless, he once again produced the documents, which clearly showed their assigned seats. The security officer scrutinized the boarding passes longer than necessary, while Heather stood behind him, arms crossed with a satisfied expression. "These seats are reserved for our premium passengers," she stated loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Which is exactly what we are," Adrian countered, her attorney instincts kicking in. "Platinum members, first-class tickets, properly checked in and boarded." The second security officer, who had been quietly assessing the situation, spoke up. "Ms. Whitman, their documentation appears to be in order. What exactly is the issue?" Heather's expression hardened. "I received information that these passengers might not be properly ticketed for first class. It's my responsibility to verify." By now, several passengers had begun recording the interaction on their phones. Zora's eyes welled with tears as she whispered to her brother, "It's happening again." At 12 years old, the twins were already painfully familiar with how their family was sometimes treated differently. "This is ridiculous," a white businessman seated across the aisle interjected. "They've been sitting here peacefully. Why are you harassing them?" Heather shot him a glare. "Sir, this is an airline security matter. Please don't interfere." Zora could no longer hold back her tears. The sight of her daughter crying pushed Adrienne to try a different approach. "Look, we're traveling to Atlanta because my husband's mother is in critical condition. Could we please resolve this quickly?" "A medical emergency," Heather repeated skeptically. "How convenient." Her tone made it clear she didn't believe them. The first security officer handed back their documents, reluctantly. "Everything seems in order, but—" Heather interrupted him. "I have concerns about the authenticity of these tickets. They could be fraudulent or stolen." The accusation hung in the air, its implication unmistakable. A few gasps came from nearby passengers. Marcus felt his temperature rising but maintained his composure, conscious of how black anger is often weaponized. "I'd like to speak with the captain," Marcus stated firmly. "The captain is busy flying the aircraft," Heather replied dismissively. "And if you can't verify to my satisfaction that you belong in these seats, I'll have no choice but to have you removed when we land at our next scheduled stop." "This is absurd," Marcus said, his patience finally wearing thin. "Check your passenger manifest. Call the gate agents who boarded us. Verify with your system." "Sir, please lower your voice," the second security officer warned, though Marcus had not raised his voice at all. "I wasn't yelling," Marcus clarified, increasingly aware of how this scene would appear to observers who didn't hear the full exchange. Adrienne reached for her husband's hand, a silent reminder of the countless times they'd navigated similar situations. The twins sat perfectly still, having learned early that any movement or perceived defiance could escalate matters. "I've made my decision," Heather announced with finality. "Either you move to the economy section now, or you'll be escorted off the plane at our next stop." "This is discrimination, plain and simple," Adrienne stated firmly. "Playing the race card won't work with me," Heather snapped, dropping all pretense of professionalism. "I treat all passengers the same." The businessman across the aisle scoffed loudly. "That's obviously not true. I've been watching you ignore them since boarding." "Sir, one more word and you'll be written up for interfering with crew member duties," Heather threatened. Marcus had reached his breaking point. Throughout his life, he'd worked twice as hard to get half as far. He'd built a tech empire despite doors closing in his face. He'd maintained dignity through countless microaggressions. But watching his children witness this blatant discrimination while rushing to his ailing mother's side was the final straw. With deliberate calmness, Marcus reached into his inner jacket pocket and withdrew a small leather card holder. From it, he produced not just his ID, but a special identification card that very few people had ever seen. "Ms. Whitman, is it? Perhaps this will clarify the situation." He handed her the ID card that identified him as the majority owner of Horizon Airlines. Heather's expression transformed from smug certainty to shocked disbelief in an instant. The color drained from her face as she realized the magnitude of her error. This must be some mistake," she stammered, her hand trembling slightly as she held the card. "No mistake," Marcus replied evenly. "Now I'd like to speak with the captain immediately. Have you ever witnessed discrimination so blatant it made your blood boil?" Comment number 1 if you believe Heather should be fired on the spot, or number 2 if you think she deserves a chance to explain herself. This family was just trying to reach a medical emergency, yet faced humiliation in front of an entire cabin. Hit that like button if you believe no one should face discrimination regardless of their status, and subscribe to follow this shocking story of power and prejudice at 35,000 feet. What do you think happens next? Will the captain take immediate action? Or is this just the beginning of a much bigger battle the Richardson family never expected to fight? Captain James Merritt emerged from the cockpit within minutes, his expression grim as he assessed the situation in first class. His eyes widened in recognition when he saw Marcus Richardson, immediately understanding the gravity of what had transpired. "Mr. Richardson, sir," the captain said, his voice carrying the appropriate deference for someone who effectively signed his paychecks. "I sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding." "Is it really a misunderstanding, Captain?" Adrienne asked pointedly, her attorney's precision with words coming through. "Or is it something more systematic?" Heather stood frozen, the owner's identification card still clutched between her fingers. The security officers, now aware of who they were dealing with, had taken several steps back, their postures shifting from authoritative to apologetic. "This is completely unacceptable," Captain Merritt stated firmly. Turning to Heather, he extended his hand. "I'll take Mr. Richardson's ID, Ms. Whitman. You're relieved of duty for the remainder of this flight." "But Captain, I was just following—" Heather began. "Following what exactly?" the captain interrupted. "Because it certainly wasn't company protocol. We'll discuss this further after landing." A flight attendant named Jessica was quickly summoned to replace Heather. With profuse apologies, she offered the Richardson family complimentary meals, premium headphones, and extra amenities. The captain personally assured them that Ms. Whitman would face appropriate consequences. "Again, Mr. Richardson, Mrs. Richardson, on behalf of Horizon Airlines, I deeply apologize," Captain Merritt said. "Please let us know if there's anything else we can do to make your journey more comfortable." As the captain returned to the cockpit and Heather disappeared into the rear of the aircraft, the other passengers in first class murmured among themselves. Some offered sympathetic smiles to the Richardson family, while others appeared uncomfortable having witnessed the confrontation. "Is it over, Dad?" Zachariah asked quietly. Marcus smiled reassuringly at his son. "Yes, I think so," but even as he said it, a nagging feeling told him otherwise. Throughout his career, he had learned that moments like these rarely ended so neatly. For the remainder of the flight, Jessica provided exceptional service, perhaps overcompensating for her colleagues' behavior. The family was able to focus on their primary concern, Marcus's mother and her condition. Adrienne made calls to the hospital, confirming that Eleanor Richardson remained stable but critical. "The doctors say we should arrive in time," she whispered to Marcus. "They're optimistic about her recovery." As the plane began its descent into Atlanta, Marcus felt the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. They had overcome the immediate obstacle and would soon be at Eleanor's bedside. Perhaps this incident would lead to positive changes at Horizon Airlines. Better training, more accountability, a stronger stance against discrimination. The moment the plane touched down, however, both Marcus and Adrienne's phones began buzzing, incessantly with notifications. Marcus frowned as he switched his device off airplane mode, watching dozens of messages, news alerts, and social media notifications flood his screen. "Something's happening," he murmured to Adrienne, who was experiencing the same deluge on her own phone. Scrolling through the notifications, Marcus's expression darkened. "This can't be right," he muttered, opening a video link from a major news website. What he saw made his stomach drop. There on the screen was footage from their confrontation on the plane, but edited in a way that completely distorted reality. The video began midway through the incident, showing only Marcus questioning Heather's authority, with his production of the owner ID card made to look like an arrogant power play rather than a last resort. The caption beneath the video read, "Tech billionaire bullies flight attendant, threatens her job." "Marcus," Adrienne whispered urgently, showing him her phone. On Twitter, Jacha boycott Richardson Tech was already trending, with thousands of shares. "This is completely twisted," Marcus said, his voice tight with disbelief. "They cut out everything that happened before, all of her actions, her accusations, everything." As the plane taxied to the gate, Jessica approached with a concerned expression. "Mr. Richardson, Mrs. Richardson, there appears to be some situation. Airport security has requested to meet you at the gate." "For what purpose?" Adrienne asked sharply. Jessica lowered her voice. "Apparently there are reporters gathered in the terminal. The airline is offering to escort you through a private exit." Marcus checked his phone again, finding an urgent message from his company's head of public relations. "Call immediately. Video going viral. Major crisis developing." As the seatbelt sign dinged off, other passengers began checking their phones, many casting curious glances at the Richardson family. The businessman who had defended them earlier leaned across the aisle. "Sir, I recorded the whole thing from the beginning," he said quietly, holding up his phone. "This edited version they're showing on the news is completely misleading. I'd be willing to share my footage if it helps." "Thank you," Marcus said gratefully, exchanging contact information with the man. "We may need that." As they gathered their belongings, Adrienne pulled up another news site on her tablet. A reporter was interviewing a tearful Heather Whitman, who was portraying herself as a dedicated employee who had been humiliated by an egotistical billionaire. "I was just doing my job," Heather sobbed on camera, "and he threatened to destroy my career just because he could." "They're controlling the narrative," Adrienne whispered. "This isn't random. It's too coordinated." When they disembarked through the private exit, avoiding the media circus in the main terminal, Marcus's phone rang with a call from his company headquarters in New York. "Sir, our stock has dropped 8% in the last 30 minutes, his CFO reported anxiously. "The video is everywhere. Major partners are calling, asking for statements. What should we tell them?" Marcus closed his eyes briefly, the weight of what was happening sinking in. What had begun as a routine instance of discrimination, painful but familiar, was rapidly transforming into something much larger and more dangerous. Someone was wielding this incident as a weapon, and doing so with remarkable efficiency. "Issue a brief statement that we're gathering facts and will respond shortly," he instructed, "and find out everything you can about Heather Whitman. This isn't a coincidence." As they were escorted to a waiting car, Zora tugged at her father's sleeve. "Dad, people at school are texting me about you. They're saying awful things." Marcus hugged his daughter close, a chill running through him. This wasn't just an attack on his reputation or business. It was reaching his children. And they hadn't even begun to understand the scale of what was coming. Despite the private exit route, several photographers managed to capture images of the Richardson family as they hurried toward their waiting vehicle. Camera flashes illuminated their concerned faces as they shielded the twins from the growing media presence. "Mr. Richardson, is it true you threatened to fire a flight attendant for doing her job?" one reporter shouted. "Did you use your position to intimidate airline staff?" called another. Marcus guided his family into the black SUV without responding, his jaw set in determination. The driver, part of their pre-arranged security detail, quickly pulled away from the curb. "Head straight to Emory University Hospital," Marcus instructed, before turning his attention back to the mounting crisis. On his tablet, he pulled up the viral video that was now dominating every major news network. The edited footage showed only the final confrontation, Marcus revealing his ownership card, Heather's shocked expression, and the captain appearing to discipline her. All context had been stripped away. There was no evidence of her initial discrimination, her refusal to serve them, or her false accusations. Instead, the narrative being constructed portrayed Marcus as an entitled billionaire who had humiliated a working-class employee for a minor misunderstanding. "This is deliberate," Adrienne said, her legal mind analyzing the precise cuts in the footage. "Someone went through the trouble of editing multiple phone recordings to create this specific impression." Marcus's PR director joined them via video call, her expression grim. "It's worse than we thought. Major news outlets are running with this story without seeking comment from us first. The edited video has reached over 2 million views in the last hour." "What about our unedited footage?" Marcus asked. "We've tried uploading the businessman's video to multiple platforms, but they're being flagged and removed almost immediately for review," the PR director explained. "Someone has connections in these companies." Adrienne, meanwhile, was researching Heather Whitman on her tablet. Her expression suddenly changed. "Marcus, look at this." She showed him a social media profile. Heather Whitman's biography listed her as the niece of Gerald Whitman, the billionaire owner of GWN, Global Whitman News, one of the largest media conglomerates in the country. "This wasn't random," Marcus stated, the pieces falling into place. "She knew exactly who we were from the beginning." As their vehicle navigated through Atlanta traffic, they watched GWN's breaking coverage on the car's entertainment system. A somber anchor described the incident as shocking abuse of power, while Heather Whitman, looking vulnerable and distressed, gave an exclusive interview. All I did was ask to verify their tickets, she claimed tearfully. It's standard procedure when there's confusion about seating. But Mr. Richardson immediately became hostile. He pulled out this card showing he owned the company and basically said he could end my career on the spot. The narrative being constructed was clear. A wealthy, powerful man bullying a dedicated working-class employee who was just following protocol. The racial component had been completely erased, replaced by a class warfare narrative that portrayed Marcus as the aggressor. GWN is running this story every 15 minutes, the PR director reported. Other networks are picking it up. Social media is exploding with "Fuck or Justice for Heather," alongside "Fuck Boycott Richardson Tech." Marcus's phone rang with a call from his COO. "Sir, we're getting reports of protesters gathering outside our headquarters in New York. Several major clients have already called requesting urgent meetings about our relationship." By the time they reached the hospital, Richardson Technologies' stock had fallen 12%. Major retailers were pulling their products from shelves pending review, and 3 celebrity brand ambassadors had publicly distanced themselves from the company. As they hurried through the hospital corridors toward Eleanor Richardson's room, Adrienne received a notification that made her stop in her tracks. "They've identified us," she whispered, showing Marcus her phone. Their complete biographical information, including the twins' school details, home address, and even photos of their property, had been published on a popular news site under the guise of background information on the controversy. When they finally reached Eleanor's room, they found 2 security guards already stationed outside, courtesy of the hospital administration, who had anticipated media attempts to access her room. Eleanor Richardson lay unconscious, monitors tracking her vital signs. The doctor explained that while her condition remained critical, she was responsive to treatment. "The next 24 hours will be crucial," he advised. "She needs calm and stability." Marcus sat beside his mother's bed, holding her hand gently. The woman who had sacrificed everything to give him opportunities, who had taught him to stand, tall in the face of discrimination, now looked so fragile. The thought that this manufactured controversy might affect her recovery filled him with both worry and determination. Adrienne set up an impromptu command center in the corner of the private hospital room, coordinating with their legal and PR teams. The twins sat quietly by their grandmother's bedside, occasionally glancing worriedly at their parents' intense conversations. An hour later, their security team delivered more troubling news. Gerald Whitman himself had appeared on GWN, announcing a special investigative report into Richardson Technologies' business practices. "In light of today's disturbing display of corporate arrogance," Gerald stated solemnly to the camera, "we feel obligated to examine the business ethics of Richardson Technologies. Our preliminary investigation has uncovered concerns about labor practices, tax strategies, and potential regulatory violations." The implied threat was unmistakable. This was no longer about one incident on an airplane. It was a declaration of war from a media mogul with the power to shape public perception. Adrienne's contact at the New York Times called, seeking comment on anonymous former employees who had suddenly emerged with claims of racist practices within Richardson Technologies. Similar calls followed from other publications, each citing different anonymous sources with damaging allegations. "They're coming at us from all angles," Marcus observed grimly. "This is coordinated and well-planned." A notification on Marcus's phone showed Richardson Technologies' stock continuing its freefall. Major clients were issuing statements, re-evaluating their partnerships based on the disturbing reports. While reviewing the mounting allegations, Marcus's security chief discovered something even more alarming. Heather Whitman wasn't just Gerald's niece. She was married to Thomas Blackwood, a powerful airline industry lobbyist with connections to their competitors. "This isn't just about today," Marcus realized. "They've been planning this. They wanted me to reveal my ownership of Horizon. This was a trap from the beginning." As night fell over Atlanta, the Richardson family found themselves at the center of a perfect storm, a meticulously orchestrated attack on their business, reputation, and family security. What had begun as a familiar instance of discrimination had revealed itself as something far more sinister. A calculated power play by people who viewed Marcus's success not just with prejudice, but as a threat to their control. By morning, the hospital room had transformed into a crisis command center. Security teams patrolled the perimeter while legal advisors, PR specialists, and company executives rotated through, bringing increasingly disturbing reports. Marcus, who had barely slept, stood by the window overlooking Atlanta's skyline, his reflection showing the strain of the past 24 hours. "They've launched a full-spectrum attack," reported Terrence Walsh, Richardson Technologies' chief security officer. "Our investigation confirms Heather Whitman's connections run deeper than we initially thought. Her uncle Gerald doesn't just own GWN. His media conglomerate controls 17 news channels, 42 radio stations, and 9 major online publications." Adrian, who had been analyzing the emerging pattern of attacks, pulled up a digital map showing the spread of negative stories. "They're using a classic disinformation playbook. Start with an emotional hook, the poor flight attendant, then expand to seemingly unrelated areas to create the impression of a pattern." Marcus nodded grimly. "And it's working. Our stock has dropped 27% since yesterday." On the television, Gerald Whitman appeared again, this time hosting a panel of experts discussing toxic leadership at Richardson Technologies. The banner beneath read, "Exclusive, tax evasion allegations at Richardson Tech." "We haven't even been formally accused of tax evasion," Marcus said incredulously. "They're manufacturing allegations out of thin air." "It's worse than that," Adrienne replied, showing him her tablet. 3 former employees have suddenly appeared on GWN affiliates claiming they witnessed systematic discrimination at Richardson Tech. All 3 were terminated for performance issues over the last 5 years. The pattern was becoming clear. The Whitman media empire was leveraging every resource to attack the Richardson family from multiple angles: business practices, personal character, and even claiming Marcus had fabricated his rags to riches backstory. Marcus's phone rang with a call from his executive team in New York. "Sir, major clients are canceling contracts. Walmart just pulled our products from their shelves. Amazon has deprioritized our listings. We're hemorrhaging partnerships by the hour." While Adrienne coordinated the legal response, Marcus received an even more disturbing call from the twins' school. "Mr. Richardson, I'm afraid there's been an incident. Several parents have organized a protest outside our gates, and some students have been repeating troubling statements about your family. We believe it would be best if Zora and Zachariah did not attend until this situation resolves." The media assault had reached their children. Marcus looked over at the twins, who sat playing quietly on their tablets, unaware that their normal lives had been effectively suspended. "We need to move the family to a secure location," Terrence advised. "Your home address has been widely circulated online. There are already reports of protesters gathering there." "What about my mother?" Marcus asked, looking at Eleanor's still form in the hospital bed. "We're arranging for private medical care at a secure facility," Terrence assured him. "But we need to move quickly." As they prepared to relocate, Adrienne received a disturbing email from her law firm. "They've placed me on administrative leave," she said quietly, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Apparently, anonymous complaints have been filed against my license to practice." "They're trying to isolate us," Marcus realized. "Cut off our support systems one by one." The doctor arrived with concerning news about Eleanor. "Her blood pressure is elevating, and we're seeing increased stress indicators. Has something changed in her environment?" Marcus glanced at the television still playing in the corner, where a GWN reporter stood outside Eleanor's childhood home in Detroit, broadcasting personal details about her life under the guise of a human interest story. "The media attention," Marcus explained grimly. "It's everywhere." "Then we need to limit it immediately," the doctor advised. "This level of stress could seriously compromise her recovery." By afternoon, their world had contracted further. Richardson Technologies' banking partners reported regulatory inquiries that required temporarily restricting certain financial operations. Major speaking engagements canceled Marcus's appearances. Charitable organizations the family had supported for years issued statements re-evaluating their relationship with the Richardson Foundation. Most shocking was the betrayal from within their circle. Daryl Jenkins, whom Marcus had considered a friend for 15 years, appeared on GWN with insider information about the Richardson family. Marcus always had a chip on his shoulder, Daryl claimed, clearly reading from prepared talking points. He would often say the rules didn't apply to him because of who he was. What happened on that plane doesn't surprise me at all. Watching this fabricated account from someone who had celebrated holidays in their home, Marcus felt a profound sense of violation. The twins, overhearing this interview, looked to their father with confusion and hurt in their eyes. "Why is Uncle Daryl saying those things, Dad?" Zora asked. "He knows that's not true." Before Marcus could answer, their security team received an alert. Someone had leaked the family's new location to the press. Cameras and reporters were already assembling outside the secure medical facility where they had relocated Eleanor. "They're everywhere," Marcus whispered, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "Maybe I should make a public statement, try to address this directly." Adrian shook her head firmly. "That's exactly what they want. Anything you say will be edited, twisted, and used against you. We need to be strategic." As evening approached, Gerald Whitman appeared on television again, this time with a solemn announcement. "In light of the serious allegations surrounding Marcus Richardson and his companies, we at GWN feel obligated to launch a special investigative series examining how certain individuals exploit our economic system while presenting themselves as success stories." The message was clear: surrender or be destroyed. The Whitman empire was prepared to use its vast resources to dismantle everything the Richardson family had built. Looking at his unconscious mother, his worried children, and his determined wife, Marcus faced the hardest question of his career. How do you fight an enemy who controls the narrative itself? Have you ever witnessed someone powerful try to destroy someone else's reputation with lies? Comment number 1, if you think the Richardsons should fight back publicly, or number 2, if you believe they should gather evidence quietly first. This family is facing an orchestrated attack from a media empire willing to manufacture facts to destroy them. Like this video if you believe truth should prevail over power, and subscribe to see how this family navigates this dangerous web of deceit. How far do you think the Whitmans will go to win? And what would you do if your entire life's work was being dismantled by false accusations? By the third day of the crisis, the Richardson family had been effectively forced into hiding. Their Atlanta safe house, a property owned through multiple shell companies that couldn't be traced to them, became their entire world. Security. Personnel patrolled the perimeter, monitoring the skies for drones attempting to capture images of the family. "The protesters have blocked all entrances to your primary residence," reported Kira Jenkins, their head of residential security. "We've increased private security, but the crowd keeps growing. They've begun vandalizing the property. Graffiti, broken windows. Local police are overwhelmed." Marcus nodded grimly, reviewing security footage of people he'd never met holding signs with his face crossed out and slogans like "tax evader" and "corporate bully" painted in angry red letters. "What about the children's school situation?" Adrian asked, prioritizing as she always did. "We've arranged for private tutoring to begin tomorrow," Kira replied. "All teachers have signed enhanced confidentiality agreements and been thoroughly vetted." The twins had been withdrawn from their prestigious private school after threatening messages began appearing on campus forums. Zora and Zachariah, usually vibrant and talkative, had grown quiet as their world contracted. Their devices had been confiscated and replaced with secure tablets that couldn't be traced or hacked, cutting them off from friends and normal social interactions. "Dad, are we ever going back home?" Zachariah asked that evening, his voice small in the unfamiliar bedroom. Marcus sat on the edge of his son's bed, choosing his words carefully. "Of course we are. This is temporary. Sometimes people misunderstand situations, and it takes time to clear things up." "But everyone hates us now," Zora interjected from her adjacent bed. "Marissa texted me before they took my phone. She said her parents told her we're bad people who don't pay taxes and hurt employees." The innocence with which his daughter repeated these fabricated accusations struck Marcus like a physical blow. The Whitman media empire had succeeded in something far worse than attacking his business. They had contaminated his children's world. A soft knock at the door interrupted this painful moment. It was Dr. Eliza Chen, the private physician they'd hired to monitor Eleanor's condition since moving her from the hospital. "Mr. Richardson, could I speak with you privately?" In the hallway, Dr. Chen's expression conveyed the seriousness of the situation before she spoke a word. "Your mother's condition has deteriorated. The stress from the transfer, combined with the constant media presence during her initial hospital stay, has caused complications. Her blood pressure isn't stabilizing, and she's showing signs of another potential stroke." "What can we do?" Marcus asked, the ground seeming to shift beneath. "She needs specialized medication," Dr. Chen explained. "I've called in the prescription, but..." She hesitated. "But what?" The pharmacy flagged it. "Someone leaked her patient information. There are reporters waiting at every pharmacy within 50 miles, hoping to confirm her location through prescription pickups. Even medical privacy had been compromised." Marcus authorized a courier to retrieve the medication from a pharmacy 200 miles away, using a different patient name and false documentation. Something he never imagined doing, but now necessary to protect his mother's life. That night, as Adrienne and Marcus sat in their secure living room reviewing the day's developments, the hits kept coming. An anonymous source had leaked portions of their private financial records to GWN, which broadcast them with misleading analysis suggesting financial impropriety. "Our accounts are being frozen," Marcus's financial advisor reported via secure video conference. "3 banks have initiated suspicious activity investigations based on anonymous tips. Your access to significant funds has been temporarily restricted. They're trying to starve us out," Adrienne observed, her legal mind analyzing the strategy. "Cut off resources, isolate us socially, apply pressure from every angle." The psychological warfare extended beyond finances. That evening, Adrienne received notification that she had been discreetly removed from the boards of 2 major charitable organizations she had served on for years. No explanation was provided, but the timing left little doubt about the cause. 15 years of volunteer work, she said quietly, gone without even a phone call. More devastating was the betrayal from someone they had considered a friend. Cameron Wells, who had vacationed with the Richardson family just months earlier, sold an exclusive insider story to a tabloid affiliated with GWN. The article, filled with fabricated quotes and incidents, painted an ugly picture of the family's private life. "I don't understand," Marcus said, staring at the article. "Cameron was at our home for Christmas. The twins call him Uncle Cam." "Gerald Whitman has deep pockets," Adrienne replied bitterly, "and most people have their price." The next morning brought news that protesters had gathered outside Eleanor's former nursing colleagues' homes, harassing these elderly women for information about the Richardson family's whereabouts. The psychological toll on Marcus was becoming unbearable. His mother fighting for her life, his children essentially imprisoned, his wife's career under attack, and now innocent people suffering simply for having connections to his family. For the first time since building his empire, Marcus considered surrender. Perhaps if he stepped down from Richardson Technologies, issued a public apology for a transgression he never committed, the assault would end. Perhaps his mother could recover in peace. His children could return to some semblance of normal life. "I'm thinking about making a deal," he admitted to Adrienne as they sat by Eleanor's bedside that night. "Maybe if I resign and issue a statement taking responsibility." "Taking responsibility for what?" Adrienne interrupted sharply. "For being discriminated against? For building a successful company while black? For existing in spaces they think you don't belong?" "For the sake of the children," Marcus said quietly. "For my mother." Adrienne took his hand firmly. "Listen to me. The moment you surrender to a lie, you validate every other lie they've told. This isn't just about us anymore. This is about whether powerful people can simply erase the truth when it doesn't serve them." As if to punctuate her point, Marcus's tablet chimed with an urgent message from Terrence Walsh. The security chief had discovered something disturbing in his investigation of the Whitmans. "Sir, this goes deeper than we thought. Heather Whitman wasn't just randomly assigned to your flight. She specifically requested the assignment when your reservation appeared in the system. And there's more. We've uncovered evidence that Gerald Whitman has done this before, targeting other successful minority business owners who entered industries his associates consider their territory." The revelation shifted something fundamental in Marcus's understanding of the situation. This wasn't just about one incident of discrimination or even a media mogul's vindictiveness. This was systemic, a deliberate strategy to maintain certain power structures by eliminating threats to the status quo. The understanding brought clarity. Surrendering wouldn't save his family. It would only validate the tactics being used against them. The real question wasn't whether to fight back, but how to fight an enemy who controlled so much of the information landscape. Looking at his unconscious mother, the woman who had taught him never to back down from injustice, Marcus made his decision. "Tell Terrence to dig deeper," he instructed Adrienne. "If they've done this before, there will be patterns, evidence, maybe even other victims willing to speak out. The path forward would be difficult, perhaps the greatest challenge of their lives. But the Richardson family would not surrender to a lie, no matter how powerfully it was amplified." Dawn broke over Atlanta as Marcus reviewed the encrypted files Terrence Walsh had sent overnight. What had begun as a security investigation had uncovered something far more sinister, a pattern so deliberate it left no room for coincidence. "Adrienne, you need to see this," Marcus called, spreading the documents across the secure room's conference table. Adrienne, who had been coordinating with their remaining loyal legal team, joined him. Together, they examined the evidence Terrence's team had assembled through digital forensics, financial analysis, and confidential interviews with former Whitman employees. "Heather Whitman has worked for Horizon Airlines for just 7 months, Marcus noted, pointing to her employment records. "She was transferred to the New York-Atlanta route 3 days after we booked our tickets. That's not possible without high-level intervention," Adrienne observed. "Someone with access to the reservation system flagged our booking." Further documents revealed that Thomas Blackwood, Heather's husband and Gerald Whitman's nephew-in-law, had held multiple closed-door meetings with executives from Skyward International, Horizon Airline's largest competitor, in the weeks before the incident. They were plotting a hostile takeover of Horizon, Marcus realized, connecting the dots. They didn't know I had already acquired controlling interest. Their plan was to manufacture a discrimination incident, drive down Horizon's stock value, then swoop in and purchase it at a discount. "But when you revealed your ownership card on the plane," Adrienne began, "it threw their entire plan into chaos," Marcus finished. "That's why they pivoted so quickly to attacking Richardson Technologies instead. They couldn't get Horizon, so they decided to destroy everything else I've built." The most damning evidence came from a former assistant to Gerald Whitman, who had been quietly cataloging his employer's questionable tactics for years as an insurance policy. The assistant, now working with Terrence under condition of anonymity, had provided recorded conversations, meeting notes, and internal memos dating back over a decade. "Look at this pattern," Adrienne said, arranging several case files chronologically. "Langston Communications 2015, Ribeiro Shipping 2019, Carter Pharmaceuticals, 2021. All successful companies founded by people of color, all targeted by similar media campaigns after they expanded into sectors where Whitman or his associates had interests. And all eventually forced to sell at massive discounts to companies connected to Whitman's network," Marcus added grimly. The method was consistent: manufacture a crisis, amplify it through Whitman's media empire, cut off the target's support systems, and apply pressure until they had no choice but to surrender their business interests. "This isn't just corporate rivalry," Adrienne said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "This is systematic economic discrimination disguised as business strategy." The most explosive revelation came from an audio recording of Gerald Whitman speaking to a group of executives at a private club. In the recording, made just 2 weeks before the airplane incident, Whitman could be heard clearly saying, "Richardson's getting too big for his britches. Buying an airline? That's not their place. We need to put him back where he belongs before he gives others ideas. The naked racism in the statement, combined with the documented pattern of similar actions against other minority business owners, painted a clear picture of the real motivation behind the attack on the Richardson family. They never expected us to fight back this effectively, Marcus observed. All their previous targets eventually capitulated. Because they were fighting alone, Adrienne pointed out. None of them had the resources or connections to withstand a full-spectrum assault from the Whitman Empire. As Marcus and Adrienne processed these revelations, Terrence Walsh arrived with additional security personnel. "We've completed the sweep of your systems," he reported. "We found sophisticated spyware on your corporate network and personal devices. They've had access to your emails, calendar, even real-time location data for at least 4 months." The invasion of privacy was staggering. The Whitmans hadn't just reacted to an opportunity. They had been monitoring the Richardson family, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "There's more," Terrence continued, his expression grave. "We believe they attempted to access your children's school records and your mother's medical files, and we've confirmed that several of your household staff were approached and offered significant compensation for information about your family." The comprehensive nature of the attack left no doubt about the resources and determination behind it. This wasn't impulsive retaliation. It was a calculated campaign to erase everything Marcus had built. "How do we fight this?" Marcus asked, the question hanging heavily in the secure room. "They control so much of the media landscape." Adrienne, who had been analyzing the evidence with her attorney's precision, looked up with newfound determination. "By changing the battlefield. Gerald Whitman has spent decades operating in the shadows, using his media empire to shape narratives while keeping his own actions hidden. We need to bring everything into the light." Over the next several hours, they developed a counter-strategy. First, they would need to secure their digital infrastructure against further intrusions. Second, they would gather testimonies from other victims of Whitman's tactics. Third, they would find channels outside Whitman's influence to release the evidence. "We need to move carefully," Adrienne cautioned. "Gerald Whitman has destroyed people for far less than what we're planning." As if to emphasize her point, Marcus's tablet chimed with an urgent alert. A small independent news outlet that had published a questioning piece about the inconsistencies in the Whitman narrative had suddenly had its website taken down for terms of service violations. The message was clear: challenge the Whitman empire at your peril. Despite these intimidation tactics, something had fundamentally changed. The Richardson family now understood they weren't facing random discrimination or even simple corporate rivalry. They were confronting a systematic campaign designed to enforce racial hierarchies in the business world. "This isn't just about saving our company anymore," Marcus said, looking at the evidence spread before them. "It's about exposing a system that's been silently maintaining inequality while pretending those barriers don't exist." Adrienne nodded, a new determination in her eyes. "They expected us to either accept the discrimination quietly or fight back in ways they could control and distort. They never expected us to expose the entire system." As they refined their strategy, a notification appeared on Marcus's secure phone. The hashtag #TruthForRichardson had begun trending on social media platforms, started by former employees and customers who questioned the sudden barrage of negative stories. It wasn't much, certainly nothing compared to the massive reach of the Whitman media empire. But it was something. A crack in the narrative. A sign that not everyone was willing to accept the manufactured reality being pushed by GWN and its affiliates. For the first time since the crisis began, Marcus allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. The battle ahead would be difficult, perhaps the most challenging of his life, but with the truth on their side, they had a fighting chance. 5 days into the crisis, the Richardson family gathered in their safe house's secure conference room for what Marcus had dubbed Operation Daylight. Present were their most trusted allies, people who had refused to abandon them despite the risks to their own reputations and careers. "We need to be strategic," Marcus began, addressing the small group. "The Whitman empire controls major media outlets, has infiltrated our networks, and has seemingly unlimited resources. but they have one critical vulnerability. They need secrecy to operate effectively. Adrian unveiled their counter-strategy on the digital whiteboard. We'll execute this in coordinated phases. First, we secure our remaining assets and communication channels. Second, we gather and verify evidence from multiple sources. Third, we find platforms beyond Whitman's control to release the truth. The team included Jordan Chen, Richardson Technologies' cybersecurity chief, who had remained loyal despite personal threats. Vanessa Washington, a crisis management specialist who had worked with several previous Whitman targets. And David Okafor, an investigative journalist who had been tracking Gerald Whitman's questionable business practices for years. I've established secure communication channels with former executives from companies previously targeted by Whitman, David reported. Many are willing to share their experiences, though most will only do so with ironclad anonymity guarantees. Understood, Marcus agreed. Their safety is paramount. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly later that day. 3 additional passengers from Flight AX472 had come forward with unedited videos of the confrontation, clearly showing Heather Whitman's discriminatory behavior and the events leading up to Marcus revealing his ownership. One passenger, an elderly white woman seated across from the Richardson family, provided particularly damning footage with clear audio of Heather saying, "I know first class when I see it, and you people don't qualify," before the confrontation escalated. These videos directly contradict the narrative GWN has been pushing, Vanessa observed. The question is, how do we get them seen when Whitman controls so many distribution channels? The answer came from an unexpected quarter. Emerald Truth, a small independent news platform known for rigorous fact-checking and independence from major media conglomerates, agreed to review the evidence and publish an investigative piece. It's still a relatively small platform, Jordan cautioned. They don't have GWN's reach. But they have credibility, Adrian countered. And unlike GWN, they're willing to publish the unedited videos alongside their analysis. When Emerald Truth published their detailed investigation titled The Richardson Incident, What Really Happened on Flight AX472, the response was immediate. The hashtag Truth for Richardson gained momentum, competing with the Whitman-promoted narratives. For the first time, current and former Richardson Technologies employees began sharing positive experiences working for the company, directly contradicting the anonymous accusations of workplace discrimination. Black executives from across industries voiced support, recognizing the pattern of targeting successful minority business leaders. Marcus's security team managed to temporarily stabilize the company's financial situation by utilizing emergency reserves kept in international accounts beyond the reach of the domestic freeze. This provided breathing room to prevent the company's immediate collapse while they fought the larger battle. The most significant development came when a whistleblower from within the Whitman organization made contact through David's secure channels. The individual, identified only as Insider, provided documents showing how Gerald Whitman had systematically targeted and dismantled minority-owned businesses that he perceived as threats to traditional power structures. "This is explosive," David said, reviewing the documents. "It shows a pattern going back almost 20 years. Whitman has been using his media empire not just for profit, but as a weapon to maintain what he considers the natural order in American business." With mounting evidence and growing public questions about the Whitman narrative, Marcus authorized the creation of a comprehensive digital dossier documenting the entire conspiracy. The dossier included unedited videos from the flight, testimony from other Whitman victims, financial analyses showing the pattern of targeted attacks, and the whistleblower's documents. "We need to be prepared for the Whitman response," Adrian cautioned. "They won't surrender their narrative easily." Her prediction proved accurate. As public opinion began showing the first signs of shifting, Gerald Whitman appeared on GWN with a solemn announcement. "In response to ongoing questions about the Richardson incident, we have conducted additional investigation," he stated with practiced sincerity. "Tomorrow at noon, I will personally host a special broadcast presenting definitive evidence regarding Marcus Richardson's business practices and the true events aboard that flight." The implied threat was clear. Whitman was preparing a massive counterstrike designed to overwhelm the Richardson family's emerging defense. What could he possibly have? Marcus wondered aloud during an emergency strategy session. Something manufactured, Vanessa suggested. Their specialty is taking small truths and distorting them into damaging narratives. Whatever it is, we need to be prepared, Adrian insisted. This broadcast will reach millions, and first impressions matter tremendously in public opinion. As the team worked through the night preparing contingencies, Marcus received a call from their security detail at the medical facility where Eleanor was being treated. His mother had shown signs of improvement, regaining consciousness briefly, and asking for him. This small victory provided renewed determination. "We're making progress," Marcus told his team. "The truth is starting to break through. We need to keep pushing." The next morning, just hours before Whitman's scheduled broadcast, Jordan burst into the conference room with alarming news. "Sir, our sources inside GWN have information about tomorrow's evidence. They plan to present edited recordings appearing to show you bribing government officials for contracts." "That's absurd," Marcus protested. "I've never bribed anyone." "They don't need reality," Jordan explained grimly. "They've manipulated recordings of your voice from various sources, combined with doctored images and fabricated documents. To the average viewer, it will appear convincing." The team realized they were facing a critical moment. If Whitman's fabricated evidence convinced the public and authorities, the consequences could be devastating, not just for Richardson Technologies, but potentially resulting in criminal investigations. "We need to get ahead of this," Adrienne insisted. "We can't wait for them to release these forgeries and then try to disprove them afterward." As they debated strategies, Marcus received an unexpected message from a senior government official who had previously been supportive of his business initiatives. "Marcus, I'm sorry, but in light of the upcoming revelations, I need to distance myself from current investigations. I'm sure you understand. Good luck." The message confirmed their suspicions. Whitman had already begun sharing his evidence with key officials, undermining potential allies before the public broadcast. Would their fragile counteroffensive survive Whitman's massive media platform and seemingly limitless resources? The next 24 hours would determine not just the fate of Richardson Technologies, but whether the truth itself could prevail against a system designed to suppress it. Have you ever witnessed truth fighting an uphill battle against powerful lies? Comment number 1 if you believe the Richardsons should release all their evidence immediately before Whitman's broadcast, or number 2 if you think they should wait and respond strategically afterward. This family is fighting not just for their business, but against a system that uses media manipulation to maintain inequality. Hit like if you're rooting for justice to prevail, and subscribe to see how this battle between truth and power unfolds. What would you do if you were in Marcus's position? And do you think truth alone is enough to defeat a carefully crafted narrative backed by billions of dollars? Gerald Whitman's press conference began precisely at noon, broadcast live across all GWN platforms and syndicated to affiliate stations nationwide. The media mogul, impeccably dressed in a somber navy suit, stood at a podium emblazoned with the GWN logo, his expression grave as he addressed millions of viewers. "Today, I stand before you with a heavy heart," he began, his voice carrying the practiced sincerity of a lifetime in media. "As journalists, our sacred duty is to pursue truth no matter how uncomfortable. Recent events have forced our investigative team to take a closer look at Marcus Richardson and his business practices." Behind him, a large screen displayed what appeared to be grainy footage of Marcus meeting with government officials, alongside documents highlighting suspicious financial transactions. The editing was masterful, snippets of legitimate business meetings interspersed with fabricated audio that made innocent conversations sound like corrupt negotiations. "What you're seeing is evidence of systematic corruption," Gerald continued, gesturing to the screen. "Our investigation has uncovered multiple instances where Richardson Technologies secured government contracts through improper channels." The presentation was devastating in its apparent authenticity. Doctored bank statements showed large transfers to offshore accounts supposedly linked to officials who had awarded contracts to Richardson Technologies. Edited audio clips made it sound as if Marcus was discussing payoffs rather than legitimate business terms. In light of this disturbing evidence, Gerald announced solemnly, the Department of Justice has opened a formal investigation into Richardson Technologies and its subsidiaries. This wasn't merely a media assault, it was the trigger for legal action. Within hours of the broadcast, federal agents arrived at Richardson Technologies headquarters in New York with search warrants. Employees watched in shock as investigators seized servers, documents, and electronic devices. Marcus received the news via secure communication from his CFO. They're downloading everything, sir. Operations are effectively shut down until further notice. The timing was deliberate, a Friday afternoon before a holiday weekend, ensuring that Richardson Technologies would remain paralyzed for days with minimal ability to respond through legal channels. The stock, already weakened from previous attacks, plummeted another 35% in afternoon trading. More devastating was the call Marcus received from Horizon Airline's general counsel. The board has called an emergency meeting for Monday morning. Given the federal investigation and other concerns, there's strong sentiment to remove you as majority shareholder under the morality clause in the ownership agreement. They can't do that without evidence of actual wrongdoing, Marcus protested. Mr. Richardson, the lawyer replied, carefully, perception matters in our industry. The allegations alone are damaging our brand. Several major corporate clients have already suspended their contracts pending the outcome of the investigation. As the Richardson team scrambled to respond to these developments, Dr. Chen appeared at the conference room door with alarming news about Eleanor's condition. Your mother has suffered a major setback, she explained quietly. The stress from the media presence that managed to locate her facility, combined with her existing condition. She needs emergency surgery, Mr. Richardson, and I'm concerned about her chances of recovery if this situation continues. Marcus gripped the edge of the conference table, the weight of it all threatening to crush him. His company under federal investigation, his airline ownership in jeopardy, and now his mother fighting for her life. All because he had stood up against discrimination. The legal front was deteriorating as well. Two senior attorneys from their outside counsel suddenly withdrew their representation, citing conflicts of interest that hadn't existed days earlier. The message from their remaining legal team was blunt. Powerful forces were applying pressure throughout the legal community to isolate the Richardson family. They're coming at us from every angle, Adrian observed grimly. Legal, financial, personal, medical, they're determined to break us completely. The most personal blow came when Adrienne discovered her private emails had been hacked and sensitive contents leaked to tabloid sites. Conversations with friends, family medical discussions, and private photographs appeared online, accompanied by salacious commentary and out-of-context quotes. They're trying to dehumanize us, Adrienne said, her voice tight with controlled anger. Make us objects of ridicule and contempt so that no one questions what's happening to us. By nightfall, Marcus found himself facing an impossible dilemma. Their counter-offensive had gained some traction, but Whitman's massive media platform and apparent influence with regulatory authorities had created a tsunami of legal, financial, and personal crises converging simultaneously. The evidence they had gathered about Whitman's pattern of discrimination was compelling. But would it matter if Richardson Technologies was dismantled by federal investigators? Would the truth about the original flight incident make any difference if Horizon Airlines removed Marcus as an owner? Could any of it help Eleanor survive if the stress of the situation continued to compromise her recovery? For the first time in his career, Marcus Richardson, the man who had overcome poverty, discrimination, and countless obstacles to build a tech empire, found himself considering unconditional surrender. Perhaps if he resigned from his company, sold his shares in Horizon Airlines, and issued a public statement taking responsibility for actions he never committed, the Whitman empire would cease its attack. Perhaps then his mother could recover in peace. His children could eventually return to some semblance of normal life. As Marcus contemplated this devastating possibility, staring out the window at the Atlanta skyline, Adrienne joined him. She didn't need to hear his thoughts to know what he was considering. They want you to surrender, she said quietly. Not just your companies, but your dignity, your truth. What choice do we have? Marcus asked, his voice hollow. They control the narrative. They've influenced federal authorities. They've compromised our legal representation. They're willing to destroy everything, including my mother's chance of recovery. Adrienne took his hand, her grip firm despite the exhaustion evident on her face. If you surrender to lies now, you validate everything they've done, not just to us, but to everyone they've targeted before. This isn't just our fight anymore. Before Marcus could respond, Jordan burst into the room with urgent news. Sir, we've detected unusual activity in our emergency communication channels. Someone's trying to contact us through an encrypted protocol we set up for extreme situations. Who? Marcus asked. Jordan's expression was a mixture of concern and hope. It appears to be coming from inside the Whitman organization. The encrypted message originated from someone identifying themselves only as Miranda, a junior flight attendant who had been working alongside Heather Whitman on Flight AX472. After witnessing the Richardson family's treatment and the subsequent media distortion, she had spent days gathering courage to come forward. I've worked with Heather for 5 months, her message read. This wasn't an isolated incident. She has a documented history of discriminatory behavior toward passengers of color, especially in first class. Several formal complaints have been filed against her, but they mysteriously disappear from her personnel file. Miranda provided flight records, dates, and incident reports that had been suppressed. Evidence that Heather's behavior on the Richardson flight wasn't a misunderstanding, but part of a pattern. Most significantly, she revealed that Heather had specifically requested to work the Richardson family's flight after seeing their names on the manifest. She knew exactly who you were before you boarded, Miranda confirmed. I overheard her on a phone call saying she would take care of the situation and teach them their place. This first-hand testimony from inside Horizon Airlines provided crucial evidence of premeditation. Miranda agreed to provide a sworn statement through secure channels, though she feared for her job and safety if her identity became known. Her courage sparked a chain reaction. Within 48 hours, former targets of Whitman's tactics began making contact through various encrypted channels. Jonathan Ribeiro, whose shipping company had been systematically dismantled after a similar media campaign 3 years earlier, offered detailed documentation of how the Whitman organization had orchestrated his downfall. They followed the same playbook with me, Ribeiro explained during a secure video conference. Manufactured controversy, coordinated media assault, pressure on financial institutions, isolation from allies. I surrendered because I was fighting alone. You don't have to make the same mistake. Carol Langston, whose telecommunications firm had been forced into a disadvantageous buyout following a Whitman campaign, provided financial records showing how her company's value had been artificially depressed through coordinated media attacks and regulatory pressure. I've been waiting years for someone with the resources to expose this system, she told Marcus. What happened to my company wasn't business competition. It was targeted destruction based on who I was, not what my company did. These testimonies created a comprehensive picture of Whitman's operations, not random acts of discrimination or business rivalry, but a systematic campaign to eliminate minority competitors from industries the Whitman network considered their domain. The breakthrough that shifted the momentum came when Victoria Reynolds, a veteran investigative journalist who had been silenced early in her career after attempting to expose Gerald Whitman's business practices, reached out through David's secure network. I've spent 15 years building a case against Gerald Whitman, she revealed. After he destroyed my career, I became a digital forensic specialist, tracking his operations from the shadows. I have evidence connecting him to at least 27 cases of targeted destruction of minority-owned businesses across 7 industries. Victoria had compiled a comprehensive digital archive documenting the Whitman pattern. Shell companies, coordinated media campaigns, strategic regulatory complaints, and financial pressure tactics. Most critically, she had secured testimony from former Whitman employees who had participated in these operations before leaving with regret and evidence. I've been waiting for the right case to bring this forward, Victoria explained. Previous targets either surrendered too quickly or lacked the resources to fight back effectively. You have both the evidence and the platform to expose the entire system. Support emerged from unexpected quarters. The tech community, recognizing the dangerous precedent of allowing media manipulation to destroy a legitimate business, rallied behind Richardson Technologies with the hashtag #TechStandsWithMarcus. Rival companies that normally competed fiercely, with Richardson Tech issued statements questioning the timing and circumstances of the federal investigation. James Parker, a former federal prosecutor who had resigned rather than participate in what he considered a politically motivated investigation years earlier, volunteered to represent the Richardson family. His reputation for integrity and his knowledge of how regulatory agencies could be influenced made him an invaluable ally. "What's happening to you follows a pattern I've seen before," Parker explained during their first strategy session. "Regulatory agencies are susceptible to media pressure and political influence. We need to separate the legitimate investigation process from the tainted origin of these allegations." The most crucial technical breakthrough came when Jordan's security team recovered deleted security footage from the aircraft's internal cameras. Horizon Airlines routinely recorded cabin activity, but maintained these recordings for only 72 hours, unless specifically preserved. Through sophisticated digital forensics, Jordan's team recovered footage that Whitman operatives had deleted from airline servers. This unedited footage from multiple angles showed the entire incident, from Heather deliberately ignoring the family's requests for service to her fabricating concerns about their tickets. It provided irrefutable evidence contradicting the narrative Gerald Whitman had been promoting across his media platforms. Perhaps most surprisingly, an anonymous hacker collective known for exposing corporate malfeasance contacted Marcus through secure channels, providing evidence they had obtained by infiltrating Whitman Media's internal servers. The material included email exchanges between Gerald Whitman and associates explicitly discussing their strategy to put Richardson back in his place and make an example of anyone who doesn't know their lane. While legally complicated to use, due to how it was obtained, this evidence provided the Richardson team with roadmaps to locate legitimate, admissible evidence through proper channels. As these various threads of support came together, Marcus began to see a path forward. What had begun as an isolated family fighting an overwhelming media empire had evolved into something more powerful, a coalition of victims, witnesses, experts and allies united against a system of discrimination disguised as business competition. Even some of Marcus's competitors, recognizing the dangerous precedent the Whitman tactics represented, offered temporary alliances. "Today it's you, tomorrow it could be any of us," the CEO of a rival tech firm noted during a secure call. "This transcends competition. It's about whether truth still matters in American business." As the coalition's evidence mounted and public opinion began showing signs of shifting, Gerald Whitman made an unexpected move. Through intermediaries, he proposed a private meeting with Marcus, a reconciliation discussion to resolve misunderstandings between them. "It's a trap," Adrian warned immediately. "He's trying to get you alone, away from your evidence and allies." "Probably," Marcus agreed. "But it's also the first sign that our counteroffensive is having an effect. He wouldn't offer to meet if he thought he was winning." The question now was whether to engage with Whitman directly, and if so, how to turn his offer into an opportunity rather than a vulnerability. The Whitman Media headquarters in downtown Atlanta projected power through every architectural detail, from its commanding height dominating the skyline to the imposing security measures that controlled access. As Marcus's vehicle approached the private underground entrance, he mentally reviewed the high-stakes gamble he was about to undertake. "The meeting is set for 30 minutes, Adrian reminded him through the secure communication device concealed in his ear. "Our team is monitoring everything. If anything seems off, use the code phrase, and we initiate extraction immediately." Though Adrian had strongly advised against the meeting, once Marcus made his decision, she had helped craft a comprehensive security strategy. 3 blocks away, she coordinated with their team from a mobile command center disguised as a telecommunications van. "Security will likely confiscate your phone and any obvious recording devices," she continued. "Remember, we have alternatives in place." Marcus adjusted his tie, which contained a nearly undetectable audio transmitter designed by Richardson Technologies' Advanced Security Division. Similar backup devices were hidden in his watch and custom-designed shoes. If Whitman's security detected one, others would remain functional. I understand the risks, Marcus replied calmly. But this meeting is our opportunity to gauge exactly what Whitman knows and wants. Intelligence we can't get any other way. As predicted, when Marcus entered the building, Whitman's security team conducted a thorough scan, confiscating his phone and briefcase. They missed the more sophisticated surveillance countermeasures, though Marcus noted their equipment was more advanced than standard corporate security, another indication of Whitman's paranoia and resources. Gerald Whitman awaited him in a sprawling corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Atlanta. At 68, Whitman maintained the imposing presence that had served him well throughout his career. Silver hair perfectly styled, his tailored suit projecting authority, his smile revealing perfect teeth that never reached his cold blue eyes. "Marcus, thank you for coming," Whitman greeted him with calculated warmth, gesturing toward an arrangement of leather chairs. "I thought it was time we spoke directly, man to man, without all the noise between us." Marcus took the offered seat, noting the strategic layout of the room. Whitman's position placed Marcus with his back to the door, the psychological disadvantage intentional. "You've created quite a lot of that noise yourself, Gerald," Marcus replied evenly. Whitman chuckled, pouring himself a glass of water without offering one to Marcus. "Business is business. I'm sure a man of your background understands that competition can get heated." The subtle emphasis on background wasn't lost on Marcus. Even in this private meeting, Whitman couldn't help revealing his underlying prejudice. "Is that what this is? Competition?" Marcus asked. "Because systematically targeting minority business owners across multiple industries over decades seems more like something else entirely." The momentary flash of surprise in Whitman's eyes confirmed what Marcus suspected. Gerald hadn't expected him to know about the pattern of previous targets. Whitman recovered quickly. "I see you've been listening to disgruntled former business associates. Unsuccessful people often blame others for their failures. People like Jonathan Ribeiro, Carol T. Langston, dozens of others whose businesses you systematically dismantled after they entered what you consider your industries." This time, Whitman's surprise was more evident. He set down his glass carefully. "You've been busy. I underestimated your resources." "Most people do," Marcus replied simply. Whitman's demeanor shifted, the pretense of friendly reconciliation evaporating. "Let me be direct then. You're in an impossible situation, Marcus. Your company is under federal investigation. Your airline board is preparing to remove you. Your banking relationships are compromised. Your family is essentially in hiding." He leaned forward, his voice lowering. "But I can make it all go away. That's the beauty of controlling so much of the information landscape. What I build up, I can also tear down." "At what price?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. Whitman pressed a button on his desk, and a document appeared on a previously hidden screen on the wall. "A simple agreement. You surrender all interests in Horizon Airlines to a consortium I represent. You step down as CEO of Richardson Technologies. You issue a public statement taking responsibility for ethical lapses in judgment regarding government contracts. And in exchange, the federal investigation finds only minor administrative errors. The media narrative shifts to a story of redemption, the businessman who acknowledged mistakes and seeks to make amends. Your company survives, though, under new leadership. Your family returns to normal life." Marcus studied the document, noting the comprehensive nature of the surrender. Whitman was demanding. "This would erase everything I've built." "Not everything," Whitman countered smoothly. "You'd retain significant wealth. You could even start over in a more appropriate industry. Tech and transportation are perhaps not the best fit for your particular skills." The racism beneath the polished veneer was unmistakable now. This wasn't just about business. It was about maintaining what Whitman considered the proper order of things. "And if I refuse?" Marcus asked. Whitman's smile vanished completely. "Then I destroy everything. Not just your business, but your family's future. Your children's opportunities, your mother's care." He pressed another button, revealing a different screen showing Eleanor Richardson's current medical facility. Did you know that hospital relies on medical supplies from Whitman Healthcare Logistics? One word from me, and critical equipment. For your mother's treatment faces unfortunate delays. The naked threat against his ailing mother ignited fury in Marcus, but he maintained his composed exterior. This was exactly the evidence of criminal behavior they needed, if they could record it properly. You've thought of everything, Marcus acknowledged, buying time while their surveillance equipment captured Whitman's threats. I always do, Whitman replied, sliding a pen across the desk. Sign the documents and this ends today. Refuse and I promise you'll wish you had taken this offer. Marcus stared at the pen, appearing to contemplate surrender while his mind raced through contingency plans. The recording devices were capturing everything, but would it be enough? Would evidence of blackmail matter if Whitman followed through on his threats before they could use it? As Marcus reluctantly reached for the pen, appearing defeated, a sudden blaring alarm shattered the tense silence of the office. Red emergency lights began flashing throughout the room. What the hell? Whitman muttered, reaching for his phone. Security personnel burst through the door. Sir, we need to evacuate immediately. There's been a security breach. Confusion erupted as the alarm continued blaring. Whitman's security team surrounded him protectively, seemingly forgetting Marcus in the chaos. Through his concealed earpiece, Marcus heard Adrian's calm voice. Stay in position. Everything is proceeding as planned. The office door burst open again. This time, the individuals entering weren't Whitman's security personnel, but federal agents in tactical gear, led by a woman in a suit who immediately identified herself. Gerald Whitman. I'm Special Agent Rivera with the FBI. We have a warrant to search these premises and seize evidence related to ongoing investigations into extortion, blackmail, and racketeering. Behind the agents came Adrian, accompanied by the Richardson security team and several government officials. The expression on Whitman's face transformed from confusion to disbelief as he realized what was happening. What is the meaning of this? He demanded, his authoritative voice now tinged with panic. Do you know who I am? Perfectly aware, Mr. Whitman, Agent Rivera replied coolly. We're also aware of the threats you just made against the Richardson family, including the threat to interfere with medical care for Eleanor Richardson. Whitman's face paled. That's absurd. This was a private business meeting. You have no right. Actually, Marcus interjected calmly, this wasn't private at all. He gestured toward the ceiling. Your reconciliation meeting has been streaming, lived to several secure platforms for the past 20 minutes. The trap had been reversed. When Whitman proposed the private meeting, the Richardson team recognized it as both a danger and an opportunity. They had coordinated with law enforcement officials who had been gathering evidence on Whitman's organization through independent investigations. Adrian stepped forward. The meeting is currently trending on social media, Mr. Whitman. Over 2 million people have watched you threaten a critically ill woman's medical care to force her son to surrender his business interests. Whitman's composure shattered completely. This is illegal surveillance. You can't. Single-party consent is legal in Georgia, Adrian stated with professional precision. Marcus consented to recording this conversation. And your threats constitute multiple federal crimes. Agent Rivera continued. Mr. Whitman, we've been investigating your organization for some time. The Richardson case simply accelerated our timeline and provided additional evidence. What Gerald Whitman couldn't know was that his empire had been crumbling from within for months. Disgruntled employees, tired of the toxic culture and questionable tactics, had been providing information to federal investigators. The Richardson incident had been the catalyst that brought these simmering investigations to a boil. This is a misunderstanding, Whitman insisted, his voice no longer carrying its usual authority. Marcus and I were discussing hypothetical business scenarios. Hypothetical threats against hospital supplies for his mother, Adrian challenged. I believe your exact words were critical equipment for your mother's treatment faces unfortunate delays. As federal agents began the systematic process of securing evidence throughout the Whitman media headquarters, Marcus received updates through his security team. Simultaneous raids were occurring at multiple Whitman properties and affiliated businesses. The coordinated operation involved dozens of federal agents across several states. Most significantly, former victims of Whitman's tactics had united to provide testimony about similar patterns of discrimination, threats, and economic sabotage. What had seemed like isolated instances over the years now formed a compelling pattern of systematic racial discrimination disguised as business competition. Within hours, the narrative Gerald Whitman had so carefully constructed began unraveling across all media platforms, including many he didn't control. The unedited video from Flight X472, testimony from other passengers, evidence of Heather Whitman's deliberate placement on the flight, and the documented pattern of targeting minority business owners created an overwhelming case. The federal investigation into Richardson Technologies was suspended pending review of its origins, with officials acknowledging the possibility of improper influence. Horizon Airlines board issued a public apology to Marcus, confirming his continuing role as majority shareholder. Most importantly, Eleanor Richardson was transferred to the nation's top medical facility, where she began showing signs of recovery away from the stress of media harassment. In the weeks that followed, the true extent of the Whitman empire's tactics became public knowledge. Former employees came forward with evidence of systematic discrimination, document forgery, and coordination with regulatory agencies to target specific businesses. Heather Whitman and Gerald Whitman both faced multiple charges related to discrimination, extortion, and witness tampering. 6 months later, Marcus stood at a podium in the newly renovated Horizon Airlines headquarters, addressing employees and media representatives. The company had implemented a comprehensive anti-discrimination program that was becoming a model for the industry. Richardson Technologies had recovered its market position and was expanding into new areas. What happened to our family wasn't just about discrimination on one flight, Marcus explained to the assembled crowd. It exposed a system where power and prejudice worked together to maintain barriers that should have fallen long ago. The lesson isn't just about standing up against overt discrimination, but recognizing and dismantling the sophisticated systems that perpetuate inequality in more subtle ways. As he concluded his remarks, Marcus made a surprising announcement. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Horizon Airlines' new Vice President of Passenger Experience, Miranda Johnson. The former junior flight attendant who had risked her career to provide evidence about Heather Whitman's discrimination stepped forward to applause. Her courage in that critical moment had helped expose the truth, demonstrating that integrity could ultimately triumph over power and prejudice. Eleanor Richardson, now recovered and sitting in the front row, beamed with pride at her son. The family that had faced systematic destruction had not only survived, but emerged stronger, and in the process, helped expose and begin dismantling a system that had silently maintained inequality while pretending those barriers didn't exist. Sometimes, true justice requires turbulence before the landing. The Richardson family's story offers profound lessons about the complex nature of racial discrimination in modern society. First, it reveals how discrimination has evolved from overt acts to sophisticated systems that maintain inequality while providing plausible deniability. What the Richardsons faced wasn't just a prejudiced flight attendant, but an intricate network designed to preserve traditional power structures by eliminating perceived threats. Second, this story demonstrates the dangerous intersection of media, wealth, and prejudice. Gerald Whitman's ability to shape public perception through his media empire shows how narratives can be manipulated to reinforce biases and punish those who challenge the status quo. In an age of information overload, controlling the narrative often means controlling reality itself. Third, we see the importance of coalitions and solidarity. The Richardsons only began to make progress when other victims, whistleblowers, and allies united with them. Individual resistance, no matter how resourceful, is vulnerable against systemic oppression. Collective action provides the strength and diversity of skills needed to expose entrenched discrimination. Fourth, the story highlights how technology can both enable oppression and facilitate justice. The same digital tools used to spread misinformation also allowed for the documentation of truth and the coordination of resistance. In the digital age, evidence preservation and secure communication are as important as moral courage. Finally, the Richardson story teaches us about resilience and strategic resistance. Rather than responding emotionally or surrendering to overwhelming forces, the family gathered evidence, built alliances, and identified their opponents' vulnerabilities. They recognized that dismantling systems of discrimination requires not just courage but strategy, patience, and precision. The most important lesson may be that justice, while not guaranteed, remains possible even against tremendous odds. When truth is preserved, alliances are formed, and resistance is both principled and strategic. True change requires not just exposing individual acts of discrimination, but illuminating and dismantling the systems that enable them. Has a powerful person or organization ever tried to silence your truth? Have you witnessed discrimination disguised as business as usual? Share your experiences in the comments below. Do you think corporations and media outlets should be held accountable for perpetuating discriminatory practices? Type "accountability matters" if you believe there should be stronger consequences for systematic discrimination. If this story of resilience against overwhelming odds resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that expose injustice and celebrate those who stand against it. Share this video with someone who needs inspiration to keep fighting when the odds seem stacked against them. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Richardson family's struggle. Remember that in the fight against discrimination, your voice, your support, and your courage matter. Together, we can create a world where success is determined by merit rather than manipulated by prejudice.